Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to watch the Great Debaters Contest as the search for the next great debater continues across 12 regions, over 500 schools. Who will be the next great debater? I am your host, Chris Boru.
And I am Esperanza Kapanga. And today the motion surrounds trying to better our developed countries. And the motion is, developing nations need a strong dictatorship to thrive.
Proposing this motion, we have Chianda Boys High School.
And opposing the motion, we have the ladies from Nia Girls High School.
People will find you, but they don't define you. And you will find people who will help us to design you. Why do I say that? Nia girls are coming to say that developing nations do not need strong dictatorship. Well, I am here to liberate you by proposing the motion that goes, developing nations need strong dictatorship to thrive. What are developing nations? Developing nations are nations that are still in the process of rising to the caliber of other nations, like USA. That is a developed nation. And what is dictatorship? This is a system where a leader has total power over his subjects, meaning he can make the good laws that will help in developing the nation. Since there is a lot of corruption, which is the point I'd like to begin with, since dictatorship would help in eradication of corruption. When you have a strong leader, they'll be able to emphasize that corruption should not be allowed in a certain country and it will not be allowed because they are completely powerful in that place. Since in many nations in Africa, we have that the leaders are saying that corruption should stop, but still, corruption is still growing. In Kenya right now, corruption is a matter of fact skyrocketing. That even police officers are asking for bribes in the name of chai. They're saying that they want some tea. That is corruption. Moreover, it would lead to a stable government. If you look at my hand, I have 5 fingers. And none of these fingers is the same in height. One finger is longer than the other. Since every human thinks different from the other one, we all have different capacities of thinking. We all have our own perspectives. We all have our own decisions. If we have one leader, we have one good decision for a nation. If we have many leaders, then it is quite the contrary, since every leader has his own opinion. That's why leaders are contradicting themselves in Kenya right now. When you go to parliament, the MPs there are arguing from morning to evening, Monday to Friday. Why? Because the government is not stable. Everybody has his own or her own opinion on an issue. Moreover, dictatorship would also lead to countries' unity. Why do I say this, you may ask? Since you have one leader. He's the overall leader of an entire nation. We have had incitement by other leaders in Africa. We have incitement between counties. Like we have 2 counties fighting because of a border in Nyanza. I may not be an Oliver Churchill lookalike, but I'm sure that his spirit rests in me. Since he once said that the death of a seed is the burial of a forest. We should try to maintain the life of a seed by encouraging dictatorship in Africa. Veron is out.
First proposer, you have 3 minutes to make a statement.
Bullies are generally cowards, and being a dictator is an act of being a bully. It does not show any strength. Get it right, my fellow opponent. Before I begin hitting you with the facts, let me begin by saying, the great Miguna once said, I'm not boarding, but I'm saying, I'm not supporting. I will not support this motion, for I am Judith Atieno, a tiger for hope, the name that history wrote. I firmly oppose the motion which states developing nations need a strong dictatorship to thrive. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge the presence of our 2 prestigious friends that we came with all the way from the hills of Nia. That is common sense and reason. Friends, may they prevail. To begin with, what is dictatorship? Dictatorship is an authoritarian form of government characterized by a single leader or a group of leaders. On the other hand, developing countries are countries with less industrial base and low human development index. For example, Kenya, Zimbabwe, Uganda, Asia, Iran, there are a lot of them in Africa. To my first point, dictatorship reduces growth in the gross domestic product by a margin of 0, 1.0, and 0.15%. What do I mean by gross domestic product? It simply means a sum of market value, price of goods, or price of final goods and services in an economy during a period of time. That means if a dictator in power rules for 20 years, average growth will be 2.5% lower than a comparable country without an all-powerful leader. That's a major effect Africa and the Middle East pay a high price for. Moreover, dictatorship destroys the moral fabric of the society, leaving it economically gutted, and over the years, producing an emotionally and economically challenged nation. Dictatorship does not bring development. It is really hurting that you're going to argue with facts. These are facts. Dictatorship does not bring any development to a country. For example, Zimbabwe. During the independence, Zimbabwe was one of the strong economically countries with a strong economy. But when President Mugabe stepped in with dictatorship, where is it now? Friends, it takes a crazy person to change the world. I am crazy. We are crazy as Nia. Join us to be crazy to change the world. Come, baby, come. Thank you.
Second proposer, you have 3 minutes for your rebuttal.
Learned as you are, ladies, and apparently you get into this stage and what you learn just evaporates. I wonder. Alexander the Great, a very powerful man, conquering almost a third of the world at age 19. Age 19. I repeat, 19. He said, I'd rather be afraid of a flock of lamb led by a lion than a pride of lion led by sheep. My, how does this get in here? A dictator is somebody who is strong, somebody who has principles, somebody who has his own motives. Good motive for the nations, beautiful motive for the nations that he will help in developing. If he leads a country that has sheep, then actually you will be afraid of that country. But you have a feeble leader, a weak leader. What will that person help you with? Ladies and gentlemen, it has reached a point in this world that when we are not forced to do things, we cannot do them the right way. Our very beautiful lady, you've actually told us that dictatorship leads to low economic growth. And I'm sorry, but maybe you didn't do your homework well, and I'll help you do that. Germany, after the World War I, through Hitler's powerful leadership, increased its industrial growth, and its unemployment rate decreased from 30 to 2. 30 to 2, that is 28%. No countries achieved that in 5 years. Germany did so. Dictatorship. On to my second point. I would like telling you that dictatorship helps a country make faster decisions during emergencies. We are home. Let me use home. We have, how do you call it? We have Solai Dam. Solai Dam, if there was dictatorship in Kenya, my friends, I want to tell you, the death toll could not have been 46. And that I want to affirm to you. The death toll could have not been 46. We could have been talking of numbers, minute. But because we want to be good guys, we want to be good babies, we want to be Democrats, we have 46. 46 lives down the drain. Just because there was not faster decision making. I want to tell you also that Garissa, we lost 148 people just because faster decisions were not made. My friends, we don't need a sixth sense to help us in deciding this. Dictatorship is actually the way forward for developing nations. My case stands dissolved.
Second opposer, you have 3 minutes for re-examination.
My friend from Chianda, I'd like to thank you very much. I thank God that you've talked about your own interests. Do we vote leaders so that they can have their own interest or our interest at heart? And who said that making a faster decision is necessary? And this is not a decision. It is someone's opinion because it is made by one person. Get it? One person making a decision does not become a decision. Furthermore, you've talked of Adolf Hitler. I'd like you guys to take in mind that he's the same man that led to the killing of 6 million Jews. Why? Because simply his interest at that time told him that I hate all Jews. They have to die. And so he killed them. My friend, this time, you did it wrong. Anyway, if one person has hold all the power, then the whole nation suffers negatively. Dictatorship is bad for the economy. And any person who has met with the congeal of reality like I've do will bound to agree with me. Researchers say that a country's finances go down by about 10 to 15 years of total dictatorship. Now help me think of that countries such as Libya that were under dictatorship for 42 years. And what of Zimbabwe that was under dictatorship for 32 years? Not failing to think of our very neighbors Uganda who have been under dictatorship for 26 years. Just compare the Western world. These people, their leaders only take a maximum of 3 to 4 years. And where are they in terms of the economy? When we are struggling with dictatorship in the name of faster decision making, as my friends put it, mathematics is not about the many times or the many years you spend in a political position. Mathematics is about accounting for the few years you've been in that position. Furthermore, who can guarantee that after 10, 20, 30, or even 40 years, this same man will have our interest at heart? Because the balance can shift from the country's interests to personal interests. For instance, what we saw in Zimbabwe the other time, that was an epitome of personal interests. And this weakens the governance of a country. And who on earth would want a country whose governance is so weak? Who? Most dictatorships have ultimately ended in bloody wars, killing millions of people, and so much economic and property damage. If I must name, the other day our neighbors, Uganda, they had a military coup, but the other day, meaning 2017. Why was it? Dictatorship. The Second World War, dictatorship from Adolf Hitler in Germany and Benito Mussolini in Italy. Manopin Bonaparte was another one. The Waterloo argument. Why? Because we allowed them to dictate us. Because we thought that, if they dictate us, we'll be developed. Who said that? I bet he needs to be consulted. All the wars damage the country's infrastructure and economy. It may take damage to recourse these things. And friends, we do not have money to recourse damages that we can avoid. We have money to battle with SDG number 1, to come up and solve SDG number 1 that says no poverty. Lena Ojo, the great near Girls High School.
The Proposers have been asked to state advantages of dictatorship with dictators such as Idi Amin Dada of Uganda in mind. The opposers, on the other hand, have been asked for countries where democracy has failed and dictatorship has previously worked for them, for example, Libya, what should their approach on this matter be? Proposer number 3, you have 3 minutes to answer the question.
No matter how hard it is, the more you dictate and persist, the longer your success. Because there's a price to be paid for successful, and this is much more easier with dictatorship. Let me first answer the question that was raised by my worthy audience. I could have mentioned for you millions disadvantage of dictatorship, but due to the interest of time, I'm only going to give you 2. Dictatorship has the following advantages. We have less crime rates. This is because a dictator has total power over its subjects and is going to apply the law directly on them. Nobody will allow to be jailed, for example, 5 or more years because of engaging in a crime. And that is why countries such as Russia, as well as China, is much developed than Kenya. And that's why you find Kenya, we keep on asking for help from China, yet we claim of democracy. For how long will you lag behind in the name of democracy? Why can't we think big and think outside the box? Let's not emphasize on the demerits of dictatorship only, because even democracy, we have some of its demerits. People like Vladimir Putin, they are the most successful and intelligent dictators who led to development of their countries. And that's why we cannot claim that dictatorship will not lead to development of our countries. I will not support the motion, I will not deny the motion unless over my dead body. We cannot, everybody is rich enough to rewrite his future, but nobody is rich to rewrite his past. Let us not go back to our past in the name of democracy. You find that in our country, Kenya, we keep on going for further treatment outside, yet we have the ability through dictatorship of building such big hospitals for treating cancer in our nation. It is very painful to recognize that Ben Oluoch-Okello, the senator of Migori County, died because of cancer that could not be treated in our country, Kenya. Yet you claim of democracy. For how long will we suffer? My friends, let us think big and support our mission that developing nations need strong dictatorship to thrive. Geoffrey Otieno, my case stand dissolved.
Proposer, you have 3 minutes to answer the question.
First, I'd like to answer the question from the audience. First, I don't think Libya should go back to its dictatorial ways. Take an example of Mohammed Gaddafi. He led Libya for 42 years. Isn't 42 years more than enough time to take a country from here to here? 42 years is more than enough. And during his reign, we saw the worst. Deaths of people, we saw exiling of people, and the economy of Libya took a nosedive. For our country to thrive, we need developments, we need proper utility of resources, and we need confidence. This won't come by if we have people forcing us to do things. We need democracy. Then perhaps to my worthy opponent here, you said we should dictate ourselves to build hospitals. Hospitals are not built on saliva. Hospitals are built on money. Money that we will get if we work together as a whole through democracy. Dictatorialship does not work. Then I would like to say, Mao Zedong once said, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Dictators have absolute power. This means that their authority is final. Therefore, there is no room to correct that person if he or she makes an error. We have no room for errors. Errors are what distinguish us
Kenya and a country like, let me say, France, which is currently developed. Those eras are what have brought us to where we are now, struggling, crawling on our feet. Then perhaps I will say, now that I'm sure you're listening to me, human rights and freedom are contrary to dictatorship. So, who are we to stand and say that dictatorship is what we need to thrive? That is a no-no. Dictatorship simply sets us towards suffering and perhaps rigidity. Development, utility of resources, confidence cannot be undertaken if there's rigidity. Development, utility of resources, and confidence cannot be undertaken if our leaders refuse support and help from the true owners of our country, the citizen. The things we are saying here are not cryptic. Look and you will see. Hear and you will listen. That is why I, Ashley Wenwa of Nia Girls High School, stand tall, ready to tear down all four walls. Thank you.
Proposition, you have 1 minute for your final statement.
Ashley. Nice name, by the way. But do you know how much money we lose while conducting our elections? Are you aware of that? In the era of Moi, just close by, we have Jaramogi Oginga Odinga Hospital. Maybe you're not a resident of Kisumu, but I'm one. So I'm privileged to tell you that when Moi was in leadership, hospitals were constructed. And you want to tell us that because he refused for the aid, we don't have development. We have development. And by the way, if you don't know, Moi was a president that actually developed Kenya in a way that no president has ever done that, sorry. I'm looking at a country, Russia, holding the World Cups. Impressive. What will Kenya do? Or how will Kenya, or when will Kenya do that? When? Just because we're Democrats. Let us think outside the box.
Opposition, you have 1 minute for your final statement.
Wonderful. But Lena has to say this time round, she's disappointed because as resident of a democratic country, dare say that dictatorship is the way to go. And my friend, can you compare 1963 Kenya and 2015 Kenya? Can you? Anyway, this is it. The longer a leader stays in power, the longer the dictatorship, the worse the way the country is economically doomed. We've talked of so much. But then I'll want to tell my friends, Isaiah chapter 1 verse 18, come and let us reason together. Seemingly you people are tied to reasoning inside the box, and the box is opened. Get out, because the dictatorship will in no way bring us to where we want to be. Dictatorship is something that ruins us. So long as Ojolena will continue to be the proud daughter of my father, I will stand to oppose this motion. Thank you.
To the proposers, you had quite a number of points, but the major undoing is the examples you gave, you failed to show how dictatorship has helped those particular nations to thrive, and that was a major undoing. And some of the examples actually were a disconnect between the motion and there were disconnection between the motion and some of the examples you gave.
To Nia Girls, we want to commend you for having brought in the points, however belatedly, because you started off the point, but finally you came home. And you gave us why it is important to have a democracy. So that you are fighting to give and reveal that democracy is the pitfall of economic development. And I want us to believe that you managed, when you had shown the pitfalls of a dictatorship, by giving us countries such as Zimbabwe. Because when you compare Zimbabwe before the white man went out of that country, and after the reign of Mugabe in the quest of African leadership, you will discover that it was more developed then than now. I think that you did effectively.
Chianda High School. The judges awarded you 65%. Let's give them a round of applause. Yeah, girls. The judges awarded you 68.5%, making you the winners of this debate. Congratulations to Nia girls and to both teams for a job well done.
That's it at the Great Debaters Contest. We would like to encourage the debaters to keep practicing on the debate, because falling today does not necessarily mean you cannot rise up and soar like an eagle tomorrow. We would like to remind the viewers, keep the conversation going across all our social media platforms. The hashtag is GDC for SDGs. We appreciate our sponsors, Blaze by Safaricom and Brand Kenya Board, for facilitating this.
Ladies and gentlemen, remember, we're also challenging each and every school to implement at least one sustainable development goal to impact not only their schools but also their communities positively. Ladies and gentlemen, until next time, I have been your host, Chris Boru.
And I am Esperanza Kapanga. Catch you next time.